When 2022 started, Tappei decided to write Liquid Fire on paper. That is basically what Arc 7 of ReZero is right now, because I have recently caught up with Witch's Cult translations and also the machine translations of ReZero Arc 7, and oh my goodness, the arc has so much potential to rival Arc 6, and anyone that knows my opinion on ReZero, knows my opinion, what I've said on social media, on YouTube, about Arc 6, you know my love. You know my love for that arc because it is just such a pinnacle moment for the story, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But the point is that ReZero has just been on a non-stop roller coaster, honestly, since Arc 6 began. And when you look at Arc 7, it really is becoming something just insane because of the themes, to the tension, to what's at risk, etc. It's such a different arc from everything we have kind of seen thus far that it has so much potential. But before I go any further, I want to clarify a few things. This video will contain spoilers for those that are not up to date with the web novel / light novel. So if you're an anime only that's watched Season 1, Season 2, then this video will contain a lot of spoilers. Like, I mean a lot. A lot has happened since the Arc 4 with Echidna, and because of that, you know, many will be like, wait, what? When I start to kind of talk about it. So if you do not want to be spoiled, then I do recommend you to stop watching the video here. But if you do not care, continue on, because there is a lot of interesting content that might entice you to actually want to read because there is so much good going on. Because regardless of me talking about it, even if I spoil it for you, the concept of reading it and actually seeing what's going on, or at least thinking about what's going on with your imagination, is such an experience, even if you know what might happen. And I recommend it for all of you out there that really love ReZero to sit down and dedicate some time to read it, because it is such a journey. So let's dive headfirst right into it. So I guess where to begin would be Arc 6, and the reason for that is because of what I said earlier, that Arc 7 has the potential to surpass the quality of Arc 6. Now, do I think it has surpassed Arc 6 at this moment? No, but it has so much potential, and the arc is pretty much just getting underway because the setup is there, and we're finally getting into what the real arc is going to be about, that, like I said, it will probably surpass everything once it's said and done, with the lore implications, to what's going to happen with certain characters, to what's already happened with certain characters. It has that potential. But let's begin. Arc 6 was more of a conclusion to a big part of the story just as much as Arc 4 was, because if you've watched the anime, or if you remember reading it, you know for a fact that Roswaal was kind of the pinnacle antagonist of the story at that moment, because he set up everything up to that very point. Everything from Arc 1 to Arc 2 to Arc 3 was pretty much by Roswaal's design with his book, following the book to be able to meet the person he loves, Echidna. So we knew that was kind of like a nice conclusion, pretty much to the first main part of the story. And then we move on to the next part, which is Subaru really growing to try to love himself, trying to better himself as a person, and be able to do things without the help of others, or do things with the help of others, but not have to rely on death itself to be able to accomplish things. And Arc 5 is a very big story, a big turning point for Subaru as a character, and Arc 6 is just as much so, because it kind of settles the mental problems that Subaru has with him trying to accept what he actually has become. And then Arc 7 is trying to rip away that foundation, but allow him to continue boosting himself up from the development he got from Arc 5. So, as we know from the end of Arc 4, Gluttony is pretty much the main antagonist at this point. Many people look at Gluttony as the main go-to villain because of what Gluttony has done to Rem. Because most of Subaru's struggles, eternal struggles he's had throughout Arc 4 and leading up to that point, was the cause of Gluttony itself. Yes, a few other witches like Sin Archbishops and stuff, you know, have caused some problems, but mainly it all kind of ties back to Gluttony. Doing things, stealing names, stealing memories, and Subaru's main enemy is probably Gluttony at that point, what everybody would consider. So when it kind of gets to Arc 5 and then Arc 6, and you see Subaru finally face to face with the very villain Gluttony, it's kind of a moment to say, holy crap, we're finally here. Subaru is facing that opponent that's caused him so many problems, so much trouble, he can finally take Gluttony down. And because of the ramifications of that arc, he was teleported to a completely different country, to the Empire, a completely opposite part of the world that he's never been, and he has nobody he can trust around, despite being teleported with Rem and also Lewis. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But the point is Arc 6 is a great arc to kind of conclude a major turning point for the story, to Subaru define himself, to be able to actually realize that he is a good person. He isn't just a awful, foul individual. He can be a good person, and he definitely can be what everybody envisions him to be, a hero. That's what he believes. That's one of the big messages he gets from Arc 6. And this all began with Rem a long time ago, when she picked Subaru back up, and he got back up at his darkest moments, and he was able to follow the words that Rem said to him. You can be a hero. You are my hero. And that was a big moment for Subaru. Those words alone from Rem in Arc 3 was what carried Subaru in every dark moment he had from that point forward, from Arc 4 to his mental breakdown of realizing that, Emilia has to overcome the trials by herself, to realizing in Arc 5 that, he needs to step up to the plate, make an announcement in front of everyone, all the Sin Archbishops, all the big players throughout the world, and say, I am a hero and I will defeat you, to Arc 6 basically standing up to Gluttony and Gluttony's brother and sister to be able to bring them down, and he has to really struggle and fight to prove himself. And so he has had to always use the words from Rem to pick him up, because when he was about to lose himself in Arc 6, he was someone that had to be reminded, thanks to memories of Rem, once again, to push forward when he was about to lose once again to Gluttony. But he won thanks to Rem's words of encouragement. Now, this is where we get into Arc 7. Arc 7 opens up in a very chaotic manner. Subaru awakens in a field, an unknown area, not surrounded by anyone he knows. And already we know as readers, Subaru has mana sickness. Thanks to his mana gate being destroyed, he can't expel mana. Beatrice not being there means that he can't get mana out of him. So he is technically on a timer, and this element has yet to really be explored yet. But it eventually will prove a problem for Subaru, because as long as he doesn't release mana, he will get mana poisoning, and he will hit a dead end and die. And I could not imagine the amount of pain and struggling of dealing with literally your insides probably boiling to the point where you don't even know what to do, like you can't move. So that obviously is yet to be explored yet in the arc, so that is just expectations for the future. But for now though, when he awakens, he sees an unconscious girl with blonde hair, and if anyone's read Arc 6 knows that is Lewis. However, as you know, Lewis was trapped in the Corridor of Memories. She was someone trapped with the Well of Souls itself, and she never had a physical form, a physical body outside into the real world, and Lewis was the real Gluttony, the one devouring the memories, devouring people's names, and Subaru's main obstacle in Arc 6. So when he's transported randomly to a new world, and he sees this unconscious girl that he knows who it is, you know how he would react. He doesn't care what they look like. That's enemy. That's a big enemy, especially after everything that has happened to him at that point. And on the other side, he sees Rem. Rem awakens, which to his shock, he sees her for the first time since Arc 3, awake and speaking. And as soon as he comes in contact with her, she doesn't know who he is. She has no memories of herself, where she's at, and all she recognizes is a smelly individual that has the winch's scent on him, and he is being absolutely violent and vicious to a girl called Lewis. And we know the reason, but obviously to someone that has no memories, from her perspective, Subaru looks exactly like a villain, a monster, smells awful, everything. So from her perspective, he's a monster, he's an enemy number one. So when you see that type of stuff, it makes sense for what Rem does next. She literally kind of, knocks out Subaru, she takes Lewis, runs away. And once again, as a reiteration, Subaru doesn't know where he's at. He has no idea where he's at. Beatrice isn't around. Emilia isn't around. Julius isn't around. Nobody's around. He's by himself. But he has two individuals. One, from his perspective, is Gluttony, which literally is one of the most dangerous individuals that could rival Daphne as a witch, which just says enough. And also on top of that, you know, Rem, who he really cares about, regardless of what she says or what she does or whatever, he's gonna love her. So instantly, he's panicking. He doesn't know what to do. And he runs off to try to find her, but he's greeted with traps. Rem's setting up traps to stop his pursuit, because he seems like an enemy, a monster, and he's getting trapped trying to figure out to get around it, and eventually he dies, and then the loop begins once again. And just the overall struggle of seeing Subaru having to overcome this beginning situation of Arc 7 already leads to such an interesting way, because his relationship with Rem is literally rock bottom. Like, she does not like him, she hates him, and he doesn't know what to do, because from his perspective, every time he's had a dark moment, it's thanks to Rem helping him up. The memories of Rem. But this Rem that he encounters isn't the Rem he knows. Isn't the same person anymore. And he struggles. And when he finally does get moments to talk with her and he gets to see Louis, she acts like an infant. She doesn't have any ability to talk, have a conversation. But the only thing you get from Louis is that she somehow wants to be protective of Subaru. And this leads to a very peculiar situation, because there's two ways to take this from what we know so far from the story. Either Louis is the Green Room, which we know from Arc 6 was this healing medicine room that you can go to, and when the arc concluded, the Green Room basically deactivated. And then we saw Louis appear, the body of Louis and all that, and then we know Arc 7 began. So when we look at that, you could assume the Green Room is Louis. Or maybe it's Louis and it is the Green Room together. For instance, somehow that happened with what Subaru did and they got teleported together. But regardless, it's a big mystery. And Subaru's not going to be someone to quickly trust an individual that was a Sin Archbishop. He's not going to do that, because he has dealt with so many deceit and lies, etc. He doesn't want to experience and go through that, because it could just be a long con by Louis to be able to eventually steal Subaru's memories or someone else's memories, etc. He doesn't want to have to go through that. So, the big point though here is that with his constant mistrust with Louis, it leads to his relationship with Rem deteriorating even more, because he's going to shove Louis away. He's going to be brutal to her, because he doesn't care what she looks like. He's going to be brutal, because she is a monster in his eyes, but Rem thinks the exact same thing. We fast forward a bit, and we encounter a military camp of the Empire. And this military camp is the first time we really have gotten to see, like, a military camp. We've seen little brief battles, etc. throughout ReZero with Arc 5, Arc 3, but we never really gotten to see another opposing faction military camp without really, like, strong fighters. And Subaru gets into an interrogation. He gets tormented, tortured, and he has to figure out how to get out of it, how to save Rem, for nothing bad will happen to her and Louis, or not really Louis, in his mind, he doesn't care about her, but he has to figure out what he can do. And as he eventually comes in contact with them and talks with them, he takes them into the forest, the jungle nearby, and he encounters this weird, Amazon tribe. And as he talks with them, he accidentally reveals their location, and the military burns the entire forest to the ground. And you could see from Subaru's reaction, he knows what he messed up. He knows he messed up big time. People just died because of him. And he's not an individual that's just going to die. He's not someone that's going to sacrifice himself, because that's a big deal, something he learned from Arc 4. But he realized his mistake, and thankfully, he did get to loop again, because one of the Amazon tribes survived and ended his life. But it doesn't change the fact. Subaru realized his miscalculation. He thought this military group he was with was good, but in reality, they burnt down a jungle and killed innocents for no reason whatsoever. And that right there is when Subaru faced his first real struggle in the arc, to get away from them and to warn the tribe, which leads into Vincent. Vincent as a character is one of the most interesting individuals I think we have encountered throughout the entire arc, because the arc kind of focuses on him, but also just in ReZero in general, because he is a king. He isn't a royal candidate. He isn't someone that is just trying to fight. Well, he is fighting for the throne technically in Arc 7, but he is technically a king, a ruler, the emperor of the empire. And Subaru's fated meeting with him is very fascinating because, for one, Subaru's an outsider. He's not someone that is a part of the empire. But from Vincent's perspective, he doesn't know how to really look at Subaru. He doesn't really know if Subaru is a friend or foe, whatever, and Subaru and him make a very weird alliance to be able to win over the Amazon tribe, take their blood ritual, get them as allies, and as Subaru is about to die, some mysterious things happen within his mind, which, once again, this is set up for why Arc 7 is actually going to be a good arc. Subaru was cursed in Arc 5, as we all know, by, you know, the Sin of Lust, or the Sin Archbishop of Lust, and we know the curse that he got blackened his arm, and his arm just looked like it was burnt, just completely burnt. But upon his, almost dying, and thanks to him being saved, his arm that was blackened disappeared, and we see a weird message saying that the curses of curses mixed together, and Tappei himself says as Subaru continues on through the series, it's going to get harder for Subaru to actually die. Now, what this can mean is that because of the curses probably mixing together, entangling themselves, which was hinted by Beatrice a long time ago, basically in Arc 2, that it can lead to unexpected consequences, maybe benefits, but also consequences. And since Subaru technically has returned by death, and he can't fully die, and with a curse that potentially heals or regenerates him, could elevate the curse he already has to a whole new level, which means that he will not die. And that is scary, because Subaru has obviously had a lot of mistakes. One of the biggest objectives, or things he's had on his side since the very beginning, is the ability to die, to be able to reset, be able to save people. But if that is taken away from him, people that die will not come back. And on top of that, it leads to a Roswaal situation, which we found out at the end of Arc 4. Roswaal said that he technically hasn't changed. He's just now viewing Subaru like his little black book. So because of that, that means that if Subaru doesn't save everybody, Roswaal will initiate and do the very thing that he did to Subaru throughout Arc 4. So there's a lot. There's a lot to really take in and think about, with Subaru probably making it a lot harder for him to die as the story progresses. But obviously this isn't the end. We have Vincent wanting to literally take back his throne and overthrow an entire country, and he requests Subaru to help him out. Now you're probably wondering, why is he not on the throne already? Is he not a legitimate ruler, etc.? He actually is. He was someone that was ruling, and it was the most peaceful time in the entire empire that all the civilians say. But there was, you know, a coup de grace, pretty much, and he got removed from the throne, had to teleport away, and now he's trying to build up an army forces to be able to take back his throne, his royal throne. And so it's a very fascinating arc because it's different. Like, we've always seen Subaru have these little struggles with the witches cult. We've always seen him have to, like, save someone, or he's trying to save his life. You know, he's trying to get out of problems. That's usually how it goes with Subaru. But in Arc 7, he is willingly jumping in to, well, not willingly, pretty much being forced to, but at this point, there's nothing else he can do. He has to help Vincent take back his kingdom. And that is a big thing, because you gotta imagine, taking back a kingdom, there's gonna be a lot of death. And at this point, from what we've seen from Subaru's character, he doesn't want people to die. He is very greedy. That is a part of his character. He is so greedy, in fact, he doesn't want to let go of people. So even if it's a casual individual beside him, a nice person, he will not think it's acceptable to let them die, which, as we know, will lead to a lot of struggles. And so, which initiates a first major arc of Arc 7 with the Bloodless Siege. And this is a big moment for Subaru's character, to develop him, showcasing that, you know, there will be death, there will be losses, and he needs to accept reality sometimes that there is nothing he can do, which is not something easy to handle, because once again, at this point, Subaru has handled things through Return by Death. Even though he doesn't want to throw his life away, he's always had that option. He's had that option to reset and save people. But because of how his motives are now, but also the pain of loss, it hurts him deeply to see that people can just die willy-nilly, be sacrificing. Even an emperor of his own country is willing to potentially cut down people just to get back his throne. That is the way of their people, the empire itself. You fight for what you want. And it's completely a clash with Subaru's ideology. And at this very point, Subaru says himself, he's always encountered people that are crazy, mentally insane, just madness itself. All the Sin Archbishops, are crazy. The witches, they're crazy. And so he is someone that is able to accept that they're monsters. They're inhuman monsters, and that it's okay that they basically can be eradicated. That's his mental process. But when he sees regular civilians, like military soldiers going up against each other, he doesn't look at them as monsters. He looks at them as people. And so he can't even accept the enemies of the military that interrogated him, imprisoned him, as technically monsters. They are people that he doesn't want to see die. So the Bloodless Siege happens, thanks to Subaru's convincing, and it's very fascinating because they pretty much accomplish it. They manage to accomplish the Bloodless Siege, but everything goes sideways at the end with a sudden appearance of an individual that is the second commander of the Divine Generals. And the second commander just wipes the floor with all of them, and it is just a curb stomp. And this person's called Artakia Spirit Eater. And instantly when you hear those terms, you're like, wait a minute. Subaru's a spirit user. Julius is a spirit user. But then you hear Spirit Eater, and it kind of all makes sense what that is. And Subaru in his mind instantly thought, I am so thankful that Beatrice isn't here right now, because this individual probably could devour her. Which is just a scary thought to think about. But the point is that when she enters, she eats a minor wind spirit and just causes tornadoes, just wind everywhere, and just destroys things in the entire auditorium hall. And this is after the success of the Bloodless Siege. And then she just starts wounding people, catching them on fire, etc. It's bad. And something unexpected happens, something that blew my way, and this is when Arc 7 really just starts to ramp up, and why I'm even making this video to begin with. It's because Priscilla enters the fight out of nowhere. And before she does, though, Rem is about to die. So obviously, Subaru's instincts, not wanting to go through what happened all those other times throughout the story of seeing Rem die before him, getting twisted into a pretzel, etc., you know, he jumps in front of her. Regardless of his body probably not being able to withstand a freaking tornado, he jumps in front of her, raises his hands up to try to block, but before he could potentially get hit, Priscilla jumps in out of nowhere and saves the day. Now, in this moment, it's shocking because Priscilla, why is she here? She is a candidate for the royal throne. She is in an entirely different region, another kingdom, so why would she be in the Empire? On top of that, why now? Why of all times? And everything we know from her character, she is extremely lucky. She feels like the world will bend to her will, basically, and she has abnormal luck. That is something I think everybody can agree on at this point, but for her to appear makes you wonder why, and the circumstances become very clear as it goes on, that it hints that she is the sister of Vincent. And that she, at one point in time, ran away from the Empire, and she changed her name to become someone else. So she's there to help her brother, Vincent. Now, she is not willing to instantly give him help, because for one, the ways of how the Empire works is very different. You must fight for it, struggle, and prove your worth. And so she's not going to just instantly help him out, back him, and win the entire fight. She's not going to do that. So after saving the day briefly, the story ramps up to where Subaru and them need to travel to Chaos Flame to recruit each individual Divine General to be able to build political power to take back his throne, which is kind of where the translation's end. But let's back up and let's talk about the scene before the translation's end. Rem. So obviously, with Subaru throwing his life on the line, about to die, Rem, that has no memories, still thinks that Subaru is pretty much a monster. He has to kind of talk with Rem about the whole situation. And in her opinion and what she says, she's like, you're not a hero. And anyone that knows Subaru's character, because Tappe hasn't been really, I guess, like, trying to hide it, Subaru has held on to those words of Rem saying, you can be a hero, you are my hero. And hearing the words from this new version of Rem saying, you are not a hero, destroyed him. Absolutely obliterated his mind, because imagine hearing the words from someone, regardless if they're different, saying the exact opposite to you, and what would you do? What would you do? Because every moment, your darkest moment, when you have died 15, 20 times in a row, and you literally hit a brick wall, but those words behind you continue pressing you forward despite everything, but then, after all of this, the person once again says, you are not a hero. And even though this isn't the same Rim, hearing it from the mouth of someone that sounds the exact same, looks the exact same, will destroy a person. And obviously, Subaru finishes the conversation with Rim, dozes off, and walks off down the hallway. And what proceeds next is very sad. He bashes his head up against the wall just because he doesn't know what to do, because it's like, that's the one word that has carried him this entire time. And he doesn't know, because the one person he's always felt believed in him doesn't believe in him. And an unexpected visitor appears. Al. Al as a character is mysterious. We know a few things about him, but overall we don't know enough. But one thing we do know though about his character is that he's from an alternate world, and he is an individual that has a return by death-like ability. We don't know exactly how it works, we don't know the actual restrictions, etc. We just know he has an ability like that, and he has showcased this throughout the extra novels and also Arc 5. So we know he has that type of ability. But the point though is Al has always kind of kept a distance from Subaru. For whatever reason, we don't know. It's probably because they're royal candidates to two different individuals, like they're just subordinates, but whatever the case may be, you know, you never know if Al knows enough, like if he knows everything about Subaru or not. It's always been a mystery because he has a helmet on his head, you don't even know what he looks like, but he's missing an arm. And as Subaru's bashing his head up against the wall, Al walks up, is like, that missus really hurt you, didn't she? She said something that really pained you, and like, can you stop that? And with a very serious tone, something that he has not done, because from this very point, Al is a jokester, basically acting like a clown. He's always playing around, not really seeming like he's serious, but then he acts very serious, grabs Subaru's shoulder, pulls him away from the wall, and looks at him and is like, stop doing that and all that. I know she probably said something to you, but you need to understand, it's not just her that, you know, thinks you're not a hero. Everybody, a lot of people that happen in, you know, the town, you know, thinks that you're a hero. Everybody in Arc 5. So many people heard that, and even I heard that, and I am rooting for you. I want you to be the very thing you said you were, and it's like, you have proven yourself. You are a hero to people. And he snaps Subaru back into reality and tries to give him a pep talk, saying, look, I know I haven't always been there for you, but you know what? I'm going to help you out. And Al's like, look, I will journey with you, let's accomplish what must be done, and let's get this settled. And it's a moment, because it's like, this person knows Subaru is from an alternate world, and Subaru knows he's from an alternate world, they just haven't talked about it. And it's kind of like some companionship going on, and Subaru has someone he could actually rely on to a certain degree, and Subaru takes these words and realizes he doesn't just need Rim's voice anymore, saying he is a hero. He is someone that can do anything. So many other people are pushing on Subaru's back. He is not by himself anymore, and that he can accomplish things. And I love that entire moment. It shows so much growth with Subaru's character, because every arc to this very point, he's held on to those words of Rim. But those words were ripped from him. But he has something else he can hold on to. The words of the people. Everyone that saw what he did in the middle of the town when he made a speech. You know, those people are now relying on him, looking at him as a hero, and so he can carry on. And I love how Tappei does that with his stories. He always takes things from Subaru, but also shows that Subaru is able to pick himself back up despite everything he loses. Like, let's think about this. Arc 1 was with Reinhardt initiating and saving Subaru from Elsa. And with Arc 2, Reinhardt was no longer there. He could no longer rely on Reinhardt, and it was Subaru trying to figure out who he could rely on. Rim, Rom, rely on Roswaal, Millie. He didn't really know. He felt like he was getting killed by people. But then he realized that he had the help of Beatrice. He had the help of Amelia. He had the help of the maids, the twins, you know, Rim and Rom. He had the help of Roswaal, and he was able to overcome Arc 2. So Arc 3 comes around, he doesn't have Roswaal. He doesn't have Amelia. He doesn't have Puck to be able to save him. So it leads to a situation where he has to rely on other people, other factions, other people he's come in contact with within the world that actually don't like him, and he has to prove himself by himself to be able to pick himself up and fight against Sloth and also the White Well. So it's an interesting arc because Rim was there for him as well and was one of the main contributing factors to pull him up, and she was always someone that helped him through arcs consecutively after that. But the actual image, or Rim actually being there, the words of encouragement, were ripped from him. So Rim was technically no longer there to see what Subaru would become after that. So Arc 4 comes around, and everything that he's had up to that very point, from Arc 1 to Arc 2, Arc 3, was also still gone, but this time, Subaru wasn't able to accomplish the arc with his own will, because that was one of the big things that got him through Arc 3, was his own perseverance, his own will, his own quick thinking to be able to overcome it. But Arc 4 was not up to Subaru, it was up to Amelia. Amelia was the deciding factor, and so was Garfield. If those two did not come to a conclusion what they needed to do, then Subaru would have never surpassed and won that arc. So that showed once again how Tappei as a writer loves to rip things from Subaru to show that sometimes he has to tackle problems in so many different ways. Arc 5 comes around, and Subaru has Return by Death pretty much ripped from him because he doesn't want to throw his life away, and he must rely on everybody in this giant town because he only has 2 eyes. So he can't watch everybody. He can't see who dies, who lives. He can't see everybody. He no longer has a small group of people around him that he has to hold tight. He has to figure out how to deal with the situation without Return by Death, because one Return by Death can cost so much more lives. So, Arc 5 is interesting because Subaru has to rely not on Return by Death, but others around him to get the job done while he deals with Amelia's situation with greed. And I like the arc to show that there was a lot of trust. Subaru becoming a hero, but also having trust in everyone else to be able to get the job done without himself. It kind of expands upon Arc 4's content. Arc 6 comes around, and this is a unique arc and why it's one of my favorites, because Arc 6 is a retelling of Arc 1, but from a different starting point with less help. Because in Arc 6, Subaru has no memories, he loses himself, and he's surrounded by people around him that all look like enemies, very similar to Rem's current situation within the story, and he must overcome everything by himself and realize what he is, and believe that he is a hero without anyone actually telling he is a hero. So it's actually interesting. I love Arc 6 for that, and Arc 7 is building up to something where Subaru is now has everything taken from him. There is nobody he really recognizes there that's been there for him, really, besides now Al, and that leads to a very fascinating arc. So I love how Tappei does his writing. I love how Arc 7 is being shaped up to be, and I cannot wait to see what's going to happen with Lewis in the upcoming chapters. But I guess I have talked long enough with this video, so I am going to end it there. But I've had a lot of fun. There is a lot to really dissect with this arc. There is so much to talk about. There's so many little scenes I have neglected to talk about. But it is honestly just a jam-packed arc with only 30-something chapters I've read so far. And I believe there's already like 60 chapters already out that Tappei has written that just have not been translated yet. So that puts in perspective just how much content's already in Arc 7. And we're probably just at the starting point of it. But okay, you all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live, and if you enjoyed this video and somehow made it this far, then please leave me a like, and if you want more of my content to appear in your YouTube feed, then click that subscribe button and that bell icon down below. With that guys, be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.